Steve, what can you tell us about wheel bearings?
Well, a wheel bearing is required anywhere a shaft or rotation is required. So we have bearings inside of the engine, the transmission, everywhere, but especially at the wheel do we use what's called a wheel bearing, obviously. In the old days, wheel bearings were serviceable. You could take them apart, you could pack them with grease, you could inspect them, and you could put them back together, and there was a critical adjustment that had to be made. But modern cars don't use adjustable wheel bearings anymore. They've gone to what's called a sealed hub bearing. Okay, this hub bearing is quite a bit more expensive, but it requires no service. It attaches the wheel to the suspension. So one side bolts to the suspension, the other side the wheel bolts to, and this is what rotates when you're going down the road. Okay, so that's how the unit functions.
And how long do they typically last?
That's a good question. Because they're sealed, there's no way to really know how long they're going to last. The industry says somewhere between 85 and 100,000 miles, but that can be different depending on the conditions the vehicle is operated under. For instance, maybe it has oversized tires. Okay, puts more of a lever effect on it. It's critical that the nut in the middle is torqued to the right amount as well. Now, one of the things it may start exhibiting is a noise turning in one direction or both, or even a rumble in the steering wheel when it starts to go.
And what would happen if the wheel bearing started to fail?
Well, if it completely fails, that would mean that the bearing came apart. Okay, so if the bearing came apart, the hub, which is attached to the wheel, would possibly separate completely, or at least tilt to the point where the alignment would be affected greatly and the wheel would dart to one side, potentially causing an accident. This is why it's critical to have a wheel bearing inspected anytime you have conditions of more than 85 to 100,000 miles perhaps, or the noise that I indicated earlier.